Hi students, welcome to the first video for Mission 1, Video 1, and this mission is called Foundations. These are things we're going to learn in this mission you'll be seeing over and over throughout the whole year because these are diagrams and information on how we organize the body to talk about the different locations of things, to talk about what it is you're looking at, where it's located. And so these are terms that healthcare professionals use today still. They are used worldwide, just like, the science words are so weird because they're based on Latin. That's because everybody needs to have a universal language when they're talking about science and in particular the human body. And so that's what we're going to learn in this mission, and that's why it is called Foundations. Now, as I mentioned in the other video on how to use the notebook, interactive notebook that's digital, there are a lot of diagrams for these. For this mission, we don't normally have this many, so please don't worry that it's always going to be this much. So without further ado, let's go ahead and dive into these notes and follow along with your digital interactive notebook as we go through. First, though, let's look at, why we're talking about the body this whole year. We'll be learning about the different ways that the body works together, the different systems work together to make sure you are always in the best possible homeostasis. This word should be familiar to you because you learned it in biology, but I know it may have been several years since then. So we'll do a quick review of what homeostasis is and how your body, what it does to maintain that. If you've forgotten what it means, then this picture might give you a clue. So take a look at this picture. Think about one word that this picture is showing that would give you a clue as to what homeostasis means. Okay, so you should probably have maybe thought the word balance or control, and that's exactly what homeostasis is in a word. And it essentially is your body trying to stay in balance. You have a lot of external things coming at you that could possibly change how things are running internally. And so you have mechanisms in place to help you meet those external things coming at you to make sure you stay balanced. So this is the notes page that you should have open in your interactive notebook. And so the first thing you're going to type in is this definition of homeostasis: the tendency of the body to maintain internal stability, balance within the body. That's what homeostasis is. And that root word homeo means the same. So that kind of gives you an idea of what that definition is. So think about this balance board, and you have things coming down, you have things coming up to maintain the balance. So in the left arrow, type in that box, the body is in homeostatic balance when it is functioning properly. So these two arrows kind of you have some coming up, some coming down. So maintaining balance is what homeostasis is. A little bit more of an explanation. Body systems work to maintain a balance in which internal conditions change and vary by always within relatively narrow limits. So, for example, your body temperature is there's a range. There's not a huge difference in the range, the top and bottom number, where your body works the best within a certain range of internal temperature. You have certain, like sugar, you need to have a certain range of sugar in your blood to maintain. If you go too high or too low, then you're going to have issues. So there's a multitude of these things within your body. And so I hope at some point you are amazed at how well your body works to keep you normal. We take it for granted, but there are, just huge amounts of things that your body is doing to keep that normal. Now, most of the mechanisms that we have to do that use what's called a negative feedback system, but there are a few that have what's called a positive feedback system. So we'll talk about these first and then move over to the more common ones. A positive feedback is where the body initiates or starts a response that increases the imbalance until a specific goal is reached. That word in red is going to be important because that's what makes it be a positive feedback. Your body starts something and it keeps increasing and increasing and increasing until that goal is reached, and then it will go back to normal. That doesn't happen very often in our body. There are actually only 2 cases where we have positive feedback. And that would be childbirth and blood clotting. And again, this is rare. It's an infrequent event. Infrequent means it doesn't happen that often. So think about these examples in terms of the definition. If you're in labor, if you've known anybody to be in labor, or if you've been in labor yourself, then you know that once that starts, you don't want it to stop. Okay, when you're in that much pain to deliver that child, you want it to keep going until you actually have a delivery of a child. Because if it stops, you could, there's a risk that the baby could die or you could have complications. So in the case of childbirth, you want that imbalance. That's not a normal situation, but you want it to keep going until that goal of delivering a child is reached. The same with blood clotting. Let's say you cut yourself pretty badly and you have mechanisms in place in your body to stop the bleeding by forming a clot, forming a mesh of materials that's going to stop the blood from leaving your body. Because if you bleed too much, you can die or go into shock. At the very minimum, go into shock. And so that process of blood clotting needs to keep happening until the goal of stopping the blood flow is reached. If it goes a little bit higher and your body goes, nope, can't do that, and goes backwards, then that would be dangerous for you. So those are 2 examples where you need to have a positive feedback is in place. Again, it's very infrequent. It does not happen very often. The more common events fall under this negative feedback category. So let's look at the parts of that. And so there are 4 boxes here. These are the different components or parts of a negative feedback system. You have a stimulus, you have a sensor, you have a control, and then an effector. So we'll talk about each one of these. And then I'll provide an example to explain what those are. So first you have a stimulus. A stimulus is a change to a variable. A variable is any part of the situation. So let's say we're going to talk about your body temperature. That's the example I'm going to provide to you. So the variable is body temperature. Let's say there's a change to that. That's what the stimulus is. And then it's going to send a message to the sensor. The sensor is the thing that's going to detect the change. The sensor will then send a message to the control. The control is the boss. It's the thing that's going to determine how to respond to that stimulus. And then the effector is the thing that actually makes it go back to the original situation. It negates, it makes it different. That's why it's negative feedback. So with negative, you start with one thing, something's changing, and your body does something to go back to that original situation. Okay. With positive, if we're looking at positive, your body starts here, it keeps going and going and going all the way opposite. Okay. But with negative, you start having this change and your body says, nope, go back. That's why it's negative. So let's look at a specific example of these 4 parts. You're going to be doing your own example later, so really pay attention to how this works. So I said body temperature was what we're going to look at. So the rise in body temp is the stimulus. That is what's changed. So in your diagram, you should have a box over here where you can write or type body temp rises. And at any point, if you want to make your own abbreviation, I don't care. These are your notes. I'm not going to grade these. You're getting graded through these Edpuzzle questions that you're answering as we go through the notes. So if you want to make abbreviations, do what you want to do. That's fine. All right, so the stimulus is what the change is. So the body temperature rises. So body temperature is the stimulus. So your body has a sensor that will detect that change. Okay, you specifically will have nerve cells in your skin, and there's also nerves in your brain that can detect that change as well. So these nerve cells in your skin will send a message to the nerves that are in the brain, and your brain is your control center. Specifically for body temperature, there's a structure in your brain called the hypothalamus that is the controller for body temperature, or how to respond to changes. The effector is the thing that your body does to bring your body temperature back to normal. Okay, it's trying to negate the rise, sending it back. And for body temperature, you have sweat glands in your skin that will release sweat. The reason why you sweat, even though it may be annoying and stinky, but the reason for that is so that you can cool your skin. When water evaporates from any surface, it will take heat with it. That's what's so great about water. It's one of the great things about water, that it'll take heat with it. So when you're sweat, your body releases this water in sweat, and as your body temperature rises, it causes the liquid sweat to evaporate, turn into a gas, and when it does that, it takes away the heat. So think about the next time you're working out or you're outside and it's hot and sweaty, you start getting sweaty. You'll notice that you'll cool off after a little while if you stay out there and you keep sweating, because that sweat has taken the heat of your body with it. So that's how one way your body can regulate its temperature. So your stimulus is always something that changes, that causes the change. The sensor always will detect the change. And then control is always the thing that makes the decision, oh, what are we going to do? How do we fix this? And the effector is the thing that causes the effect, is the thing that responds to the original stimulus. So in all the situations of our body, we can we have this negative feedback or positive feedback, but mostly negative, that help us maintain the balance. All of this stuff goes on to keep you within that narrow limit of whatever it is that you're looking at, in this case, body temperature. So this involves input. There, you should have a square here where you can put input, or you can add this circle out in the margin on your interactive notebook and put this yourself this way. So input is what's coming in, and the stuff that's happening here would be output. So with homeostasis, there's always going to be some input and then some output. Okay, the last part of this video is going to be looking at what exactly is anatomy and physiology. You signed up for this class. You have to take it to be part of this, to get your CTE stuff complete. And so what exactly is that? Well, in your notes, you should have scrolled down to a couple of slides in your notebook, and you see this picture. So in this square, you're going to be putting the word structure, because anatomy is the study of the structure of the body. And then physiology is the study of the function of the body. So anatomy is what it is. Physiology is what it does. That's your big difference there. Now, on this picture, you see there are different ways to study anatomy and physiology. And if you ever take this course in college, sometimes they only study anatomy, and then sometimes they only study physiology. It just depends on your school. But some of the ways that you can study anatomy, you can study developmental anatomy. So you should have a text box in each of these lines that you can click in, double click in, and type in this word. So developmental, you can study, like structure of a 6-week-old fetus versus a 5-year-old child. So that's a way to study anatomy by developmentally looking at developments. Embryology is if you're just looking at an embryo, let's compare the anatomy of a 3-week-old fetus. If you've been pregnant for 3 weeks, let's look at that anatomy of that versus a 7-month-old, before they're born, 7-month-old fetus. Look at that. You can also study surface anatomy, where you're just what you see is what you get. If you're going to study, the skin of the back versus the skin of the inside of your arm. Okay, that's a way of studying surface anatomy. Same with physiology. There's different ways you can study physiology. You can study regional physiology. So the head, let's look at the physiology of the head. That involves several different systems. It involves, you can look at the blood vessels, the nerves of the head. You can look at the muscles, the bones, the brain, the eyes, the ears, all of these different things together. So if you're just studying it in one region, that's regional physiology. Gross physiology is the large things that you can see within the body. If you go to med school, or if you decide to become some sort of occupational or physical therapist or speech therapist, you will most likely have to take gross anatomy in grad school in those programs. My daughter had to do that for occupational therapy. And that's where you're studying the stuff that you can see. That's what gross means, or macroscopic. That word macro means large. You don't need a microscope to study gross or macroscopic physiology or anatomy. Another way, though, is microscopic. If it's teeny tiny, if we're looking at cells or chemicals in the body, then you would be studying microscopic. And then finally, and this is how we're going to study it in this class, is systematic. When we look at systems. So we'll start with the integumentary system, which is your skin and glands and hair and nails. Then we'll go to the skeletal system and study all the bones and the joints. So that's how we're going to be studying by system by system. And so on the data bank wall, that's why I have the different labels of the different systems. When you are filling out the what in the world spreadsheet, then you probably put something about those. Now, in any biological science, we can look at how things are organized. And again, this is something that you probably, you may be familiar with this word or this concept. I'm going to move me out of the way here, make me a little bit smaller. So you can see these different levels. If we start at the smallest level, where are you? Sorry. If we start small, the smallest thing we're looking at in this is the cell. And so there's a picture of one single cell. And we'll do a little bit of a review on cells in our next mission. We won't spend a lot of time, so don't worry about that on there. I'm ready to get into the body systems. But the cell is the smallest unit of living thing, the smallest living thing in biology or biological sciences. When you have a bunch of cells working together, different cells working together to perform a similar function, then that's what a tissue is. You can see the tissue right here. And so this is a picture of any type of tissue, but each dot represents a different cell. And so you have multiple cells working together to perform a specific function. So in your skin, you have some muscle cells, you have nerve cells, you have adipose cells, you have epithelial cells that all work together to allow the tissue to do its job. The next level up, when you have a bunch of different tissues working together to perform a specific function, then you're at this level, and this is an organ. An organ. So an organ would be something like this is pictured here: stomach, your brain, your eye, your skeletal muscle, your lungs. Those are all organs. They're made up of different tissues working together to perform a similar function. And then if we increase in complexity, when you have a bunch of organs working together, then you get this level, which is called the system. So if we have the stomach as our example, that's part of the digestive system, and that consists of several organs working together to do the job of breaking down food and absorbing it and eliminating waste. So that digestive system would include your mouth, your pharynx, your esophagus, your stomach, your intestines, and then your anus to get all that through. Then finally, the highest level, when you have all of the systems working together, then you have the actual organism, which is human beings or aliens if you're in Star Trek. Had to put that in there because you'll be meeting some soon. All right, so again, this diagram shows you from smallest cell to the largest organism, there are different levels of organization. So we're going to be looking at this with our brief unit on cells and tissues, and then we'll get into body systems and study organs within the system that make up a healthy organism by maintaining homeostasis. Okay, that's the end of video 1. So make sure your notes are filled in, and then you can progress to video 2. But get up, move around, take a little break, and I'll see you soon.